Hi, I'm Allison, and this is Learning Literature. If you have any requests for books you'd like me to discuss, just put them in the comments. Today, I'll be discussing Arthur Miller's 1953 play, The Crucible, focusing on a summary of the piece. I have another video discussing the themes of the play that I'll link to. Miller wrote the play in the midst of McCarthyism. This was a period where Americans deeply feared communism. Responding to this fear, government figures, notably Joseph McCarthy, lodged widespread accusations of communism against figures in varied fields, from politics to the entertainment industry. These claims were made with almost no evidence to support them, leading many to refer to these baseless accusations as a witch hunt. Those accused were pressured to confess and to identify others who were guilty. Despite the lack of evidence, simply being accused often meant losing one's job or reputation, or possibly being imprisoned. In 1953, Miller was brought in front of the government committee for supposedly problematic meetings he had attended. Miller refused to identify anyone else who had been at such meetings and was held in contempt for his silence. Treating McCarthyism symbolically, the Salem witch trials of 1692 to 1693 formed an excellent setting for an exploration of this environment of barely supported accusations and people turning on each other. Salem, colonized by English settlers in the 1620s, was a town in the colony of Massachusetts. It would be another 80 years until the colonies united to declare independence from England. Life at this time was dangerous and isolated. The play, then, offers layers of interest. On one layer, there is a real story being told, dramatized but largely accurate, about a horrific event in history. Another layer is a commentary about the time when the play was written. Miller saw the mistake of the Salem witch trials being repeated in McCarthyism. On yet another layer, a psychological and sociological analysis is presented. How can such mistakes occur? Understanding the last question presents the hope that such analysis will help people to avoid such mistakes in the future. Gaining insight into the play, gaining value from the play, means gaining a better understanding of all of these levels. Though Act 1 opens with a long narration about the existential dangers Salem had faced and was facing, the prominent role of religion in keeping the society safe, and various explanations for how the society was ultimately led to the witch trials, this section is often not performed, meaning most audiences would not have the context that a reader would. Instead, performances of the play generally open in the attic of the local preacher, Reverend Parris. His daughter is sick, though he is more concerned with his reputation than her health. Last night, he discovered his daughter and other girls dancing in the woods with his slave Tituba. He fears accusations of witchcraft, though his niece Abigail insists that she and the other girls are innocent of this, though she admits to being guilty of the great crime of dancing. Throughout the first act, we meet various townspeople and learn of their motivations. Thomas Putnam and his wife Anne are prominent townspeople whose daughter has also become ill. They seem oddly to revel in the new suffering, insisting on the seriousness of the illness and the likelihood of witchcraft. John Proctor, a local farmer, arrives, and we learn that Abigail used to work for the Proctors until Abigail and John had an affair. Abigail clearly harbors feelings for John, and he might reciprocate, but he is determined to have no more interactions with Abigail. A respected older woman, Rebecca Nurse, and the cantankerous Giles Corey arrive, making the room full of people who are bickering. Anne Putnam insists that claims of witchcraft be pursued, while Nurse entreats for a more rational explanation. Thomas Putnam, Giles, and Proctor argue about land ownership. Parris demands more respect and more money for his role as town minister. We suspect that people's conclusions are clouded by their emotions and their ulterior motives. Paris has asked Reverend Hale, a local expert in witchcraft, to investigate. This worries Proctor and Nurse, who fear that Paris has called this minister to look for devils, warning that there is prodigious danger in the seeking of loose spirits. They present a concern about the dangers of looking for something, already having in mind the outcome someone is expecting to see. With such a perspective, a person will focus on any evidence that supports this conclusion, perhaps drawing bad logical conclusions about what connects as evidence, perhaps ignoring facts that dispute this conclusion, making it more likely that the person will find evidence that supports his conclusion. Doing this is the fallacy of confirmation bias. Mirroring what Miller saw in McCarthyism, this is a general warning about how to pursue knowledge of all sorts. One must have an open mind rather than seeking support for a preformed conclusion. Once Hale arrives, the pace of the action increases. As his investigation proceeds, we notice Abigail's story changes. She insists no one was conjuring spirits. Then, when someone else confessed that she was, Abigail claims it was only Tituba and another girl. Abigail insists the kettle was a simple soup until someone admits to having seen movement in the kettle. Then Abigail is clear that the living thing jumped into it, not that the girls put the frog in. Such changes make it clear that she is not trustworthy. Abigail takes her own actions, making charms, laughing in church, and shifts responsibility for them, claiming Tituba forced her to take these actions. With these revelations, tension rises, and Tituba recognizes her own danger as a scapegoat, so she confesses to save her own life. Tituba names other women as witches to give credibility to her own confession, cleverly naming the women that Ann Putnam had suggested. Putnam seems to want these women to be witches, or already believes them to be so Tituba can trust that her accusation will be welcome information and will not be challenged. We understand from the context that Tituba's confession is false, mainly from the fact that there are no witches, but we also understand that it seems necessary to save her life. As Tituba accuses other women, we understand how the hysteria can spread, with other such presumably innocent women now facing the same challenge as Tituba. It was only a few years after writing this play that Miller faced his own version of this and had the strength to refuse to give names of other supposed communists to the government. But we can sympathize with Tituba's decision here. As Act 1 closes, the young girls, led by Abigail, are shouting accusations of witchcraft. Act 2 shifts from the social to the private sphere. The scene is John Proctor's farm, revealing the consequences of his affair with Abigail months ago in the strain it is still taking on his marriage to Elizabeth, noting that, regardless of the weather, for their home, it's winter in here yet. In the midst of their tense conversation, Reverend Hale arrives. His investigation has led him here, as he is visiting all those who have been mentioned in court. Elizabeth seems scared but unsurprised by this news. She understands Abigail's feelings for John and believes that the young girl is using the fear of witchcraft as a pretense to kill her with the implication. Hale seems to be honestly trying to learn about the women named, thinking it is possible they are innocent, though he is convinced the powers of the dark are gathered in monstrous attack upon this village. He questions the couple about their religious sincerity. Elizabeth's answers are solid, but there is weakness in Proctor's, centered on his distrust for Paris as a minister. This reminds us of the ulterior motives that characters may have, preparing us to see the fruition of Abigail's ulterior motive. Soon men come to arrest Elizabeth. More than simply having been mentioned, Abigail has now formally accused her of witchcraft. The accusation centers on a poppet, a doll, which was supposedly used to harm Abigail. but it is uncovered that Elizabeth has no such doll. In fact, the doll belongs to Mary Warren, the girl who now works for the couple and who is also a part of the girls at the center of the witch hunts. Mary placed the pin in the doll. Despite this apparent proof of Elizabeth's innocence, the men feel they must go through with the arrest. This seems to shake Hale, but he reiterates that the court is just. Nonetheless, he acknowledges that the world goes mad. We see his developing uncertainty and can appreciate his honest attempt to seek the truth. Understanding that he was naive about Abigail, Proctor is shattered that Elizabeth suffers for his mistake. I will bring your guts into your mouth, but that goodness will not die for me. As the act ends, he is pushing Mary to admit her sin of lying in court to save Elizabeth's life. Act 3 opens with Proctor and others striving to bring truth to the court. They are armed with written testimonies about their wives' good characters and Mary Warren, who is prepared to confess. Judge Danforth is leading the court. While he is angry at any suspicion being raised about the legitimacy of the court, he seems open to hearing the evidence. Though Danforth is introduced late in the play, his role as the lead judge is crucial. On a straightforward level, his judgments are decisive in deciding people's futures. On a deeper level, he represents the epitome of justice and raises interesting questions about the challenges of doing this well. At Paris's prompting, Danforth orders the arrest of all who spoke in favor of these women for examination, insisting a person is either with this court or he must be counted against it. There be no road between. Proctor and the others now realize the harm they have brought these people. Giles brings testimony that Putnam was overheard telling his own daughter to accuse someone so that Putnam could then buy that person's land. However, having just seen what happened to those who signed their names, Giles refuses to give his informant's name. This infuriates Danforth, who orders Giles arrested in contempt of court. The scene is devolving as the court is quick to arrest people and designate them as for or against the court, much more than it is striving for truth. At Proctor's prompting, Mary Warren now enters the court, seeking redemption. She has been striving with her soul all week. Danforth listens, but is suspicious and seems disinclined to believe her. Seeing that he is failing to save Elizabeth, Proctor admits his affair, explaining why he believes Abigail would bring a false accusation against his wife. Open to this new evidence, Danforth brings in Elizabeth. We watch in horror as she, the paragon of honesty, lies about the affair in an attempt to keep Proctor's name clean. Now chaos erupts as Abigail leads the girls in punishing Mary for her betrayal by accusing her of witchcraft. Seeing that Danforth believes Abigail and the others, Mary realizes she may be hanged as a witch. To save herself, she retracts her confession of lying to the court, shifting to accuse Proctor of working for the devil. The act ends with Proctor's arrest. Act 4 begins in the jail. The respected Rebecca Nurse, Giles Corey's wife, and John Proctor are scheduled to be executed that morning. In the intervening time since Proctor's arrest, town sentiment has shifted. It is no longer supportive of the witch hunts. Instead, people are now fearing for their own safety and suspicious of the validity of many of the arrests and executions. Hale observes, there are orphans wandering from house to house, abandoned cattle below on the high roads, the stink of rotting crops hangs everywhere, and no man knows when the harlot's cry will end his life. Ah, now the girls are harlots. Paris admits that, sensing the danger to herself, Abigail has run out of town. Danforth and the others feel renewed pressure to have Proctor confess to regain the court's legitimacy. After Proctor's arrest, Hale has been gone, struggling with his soul. But now he returns, full of regret for his involvement with the court, trying to save the lives of those sentenced to die. Cleave to no faith when faith brings blood. It may well be God damns a liar less than he that throws his life away for pride. Hale is aware the confessions that he asks for will be false, but at least they will save lives. Paris supports Hale talking to the prisoners, for if he bring even one of these to God, that confession surely damns the others in the public eye, and none may doubt more that they are all linked to hell. This way, unconfessed and claiming innocence, doubts are multiplied. Many honest people will weep for them, and our good purpose is lost in their tears. Though he still argues for the good purpose of the court, Paris is aware that the public is not confident in their cause. Without confessions, the townspeople suspect that innocent people have been executed, falsely convicted on accusations that were insufficiently supported. The confessions are necessary, then, to validate the accusations and the subsequent executions. The confession of one will imply the guilt of everyone and save the reputation of the court. This mirrors the lack of evidence that supported the accusations throughout McCarthyism and the resulting pressure to obtain confessions. Danforth has the idea to bring Elizabeth to Proctor in the hopes that she will plead with him to confess to save his life. It turns out that Elizabeth is pregnant, so the court has postponed her execution until the baby is born. They're so thoughtful. Elizabeth and Proctor have a passionate and regretful reunion. The stage direction says it is as though they stood in a spinning world. It is beyond sorrow, above it. Elizabeth confesses various sins she now admits, a coldness towards her husband that may have pushed him away and into Abigail's arms. Suspicion kissed you when I did. Proctor takes all of the blame onto himself, but her admission and full forgiveness offers him an opportunity to forgive himself. Desiring a future with her, Proctor agrees to confess. To Danforth's dismay, Proctor refuses to name anyone else as a witch, but the confession will be enough to save Proctor's life and the good name of the court. Proctor struggles throughout, but grudgingly admits to having made a deal with the devil. He reaches a breaking point, however, when asked to sign his name to the confession. Though there may be no practical difference, the act of signing his name is too great an offense to his pride, to his sense of justice. He sees the life he desired now tainted, as his name, his reputation, his legacy would be ruined. Because it is my name, because I cannot have another in my life, because I lie and sign myself to lies, because I am not worth the dust on the feet of them that hang. How may I live without my name? I have given you my soul. Leave me my name. When Proctor admits that the confession is a lie, Danforth orders the execution to continue as planned. Hale pleads with Elizabeth to help him change his mind. Be his helper. What profit him to bleed? Shall the dust praise him? Shall the worms declare his truth? Go to him. Take his shame away. But she refuses because she sees that Proctor has regained the pride that he lost when he had an affair. She thinks that instead of helping him to live by lying, she can help him best by letting him die, honestly. He have his goodness now. God forbid I take it from him. Thanks for joining me on Learning Literature. If you have any follow-up questions, put them in the comments. And if you found the video helpful, click the like button.